Dixie Carter said she has heard the concern about bringing Vince Russo on board to help Jeff Jarrett and Dutch Mantel book TV, but she is confident in what Russo can bring to TNA. He really doesn't want to have to say this one.
He truly is one of the most creative people I've ever been around. And with the time slot switch and knowing other exciting things in the company's near future, it was the right time to bring a fresh set of eyes to the creative process. He isn't a fresh set of eyes.
That is the thing.
He's been doing this for fucking 15 years.
When asked if she was concerned about Russo's questionable storyline decisions from the past, Carter said Russo is a different person with a different way of thinking.
Vince Russo is a different man today than when he first joined TNA.
Carter said.
His faith is now the center of his life. He always had an amazing heart, but his priorities over the past few years have shifted tremendously.
Carter did acknowledge Russo's reputation for having a polarizing personality. She also defended Russo's first stint in TNA as a writer when he was blamed for some bad ideas he had nothing to do with.
Vince is a lightning rod, which I guess is good and bad.
She said.
At TNA, he has taken a lot of heat for things he had absolutely nothing to do with. Anytime something questionable happens on our show, it was always attributed to Vince, whether he had anything to do with it or not. And that has already started again.
I do like the idea that Dixie identifies that there are questionable things happening on her show. And the idea is not like to stamp that out. It's like, no, it's not Vince's fault.
Yeah. Who she just said, like, thinks differently than everyone else, and you would equate that to the questionable things and big swings that don't hit.
Mm-hmm.
So after all of my lamenting, I will now say that Vince Russo, I am happy with him coming in.
Based on 1 month.
Based on the fact that I think his shows are more interesting than the droll that is the Jeff Jarrett promotion.
Yep.
Based on the fact that I enjoy a more like angle heavy show. I wish the matches were a little like treated with more respect, but I think angle heavy Impact is more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I'm kind of a believer in like TV to me like should be like big things happening and like big angles and stories, and then like you have good matches to like sort of balance that out and create like a harmonious show, with the idea that your like pay-per-views are where your true like match of the year level stuff happens.
Yep.
And like I think Vince does 80% of that. The question being like, you know, he often does big swing angles. The drawback is the matches suffer because of that. So it's like I am okay with it. I will take him over other people that have booked these shows. But it does, like, when you just have the bad taste, like, my problem with Vince is, at this point, I'm just like, I know that he's, like, the end of this company's relevance for, like, a decade. Because, like, he is the reason this company, like, gets off spike and then is just fucked for, like, 10 years.
Yeah, because as you said, there is one definitive truth about our time covering TNA so far, and that is Vince Russo is, I would say, leaps and bounds a more interesting wrestling creative figure than Jeff Jarrett and Dutch Mantel by like a wide distance.
And nothing about this is like this run, he's not on TV,
which does help.
Even though you know, he's a pretty remarkable TV character. It's just like I don't know. I think I would rather feel the Vince Russo than hear and see the Vince Russo, even though like I think he's probably a better character than he is a booker. It's just like I would rather one or the other. And I don't think you can get Vince Russo the character without Vince Russo the writer. So it's like the only real option is Vince Russo the writer without Vince Russo the character. Overall, I'm not super against this decision. I think the other times he gets brought back are worse. I just, like, I get it. I think the religion thing is a fucking joke, though. And, like, like don't justify bad creative with he found God.
He found Jesus, Liam, so he can write wrestling better.
He's doing the alt-right pivot thing of being, like the Kevin Spacey of, yes, I was a pedophile, but I found God.
That is a very funny thing. It's like, he's not going to write all the trash anymore because he likes Jesus.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. Like, I guess one thing you can say, I mean, how long does Russo end up staying?
Until 2012.
So it's like, the whole Knockouts boom was under Russo.
Mm-hmm. And Dutch.
So it's like, yeah, Russo and Dutch. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't necessarily say that, like, this run, he doesn't achieve anything good. Like, he clearly does have, like, things that became synonymous and became the factor in TNA that made it stand out. Like, they do happen under Russo. Yeah, we're the Russo Apologist podcast.
I do think the best period of Vince Russo's writing, other than when he's under Vince, and even arguably even accounting for when he was under Vince, I think, like, this isn't the worst. Like, this run, he has, like, broad booking power. He's not the only force in the room. There were other people there.
Which, by the way, I think is what we've always said is when Russo is best. It's like, he needs checks and balances.
Yeah.
Ideally, you have Russo in there with someone who actually enjoys pro wrestling.
Yeah, because that's the problem with having him in there with Vince, is that, like, Vince also hates wrestling, so...
Yeah.
Vince would veto Russo shit, but then put other garbage there in its place.
Yeah.
But, like, this run, which is, like, until Hogan Bischoff come in and then the creative changes to more their vision, like, 2006 to 2009 is not the worst. Like, it's not what you would want TNA to be, and particularly, like, there are characters that stall out, and if you want wrestling on your television show, you are fucking not getting it, even though there is occasionally periods where there's good wrestling on Impact. But, like...
I think it's just because there's, like, all-time pro wrestlers who can make, like, chicken salad out of chicken shit.
You can put Chris Sabin on TV in a 4-minute match, and the 4-minute match will be good.
Yeah, you can have Curtin, like, any number of people, and there's, like, the 6 minutes they get is gonna be, like, kick-ass.
But yeah, the TV is... It's watchable. It's not like, because that's the thing about the 2014 comeback, in that, like, I think Russo at least still had a little bit of creative juice here. He clearly had some creative passion. By the time he's brought back in 2014, that shit's gone. It's just, like, all the bad Russo with none of the juice. There's no, like, AJ Styles praying to his grandmother about whether or not he should go with Christian or Kurt. There's none of that, like, fun, silly stuff at that point. All of that's out the window. It's just miserable.
Like, to give credit to ISIS, like, a lot of what we want from TNA's identity is things that are going to be developed in this run. You know, the TNA comedy, the knockouts, the rise of certain people. Like, you have to kind of take the bad with the good. And I feel like a lot of the bad happens in, like, the first year, and then he kind of mellows.
Yeah.
So it's like, you have to get rid of, like that initial sort of, like, you know, the electrified cage and stuff like that, right? But, like, I think he mellows eventually.
Yeah, like 2008, 2009 has less of the pure nonsense as 2007 does.
Yeah.
But, like, you watch these shows and you notice, like, we did talk about how, like, philosophically TNA wasn't too far from Russo. It was already a very angle talking heavy show with wrestling being in a back seat. And somehow, like, in this month, you very, very quickly notice how wrestling takes an even bigger backseat to angles and promos. Like, there is a formula to matches on this month where the match will start, and within a minute, without fail, somebody will come to ringside, somebody will join commentary, will cut backstage to somebody scheming or watching or doing something. Like, he is terrified people will lose their attention. And, like, the matches are already only 3 or 4 minutes long, but even then, he has to go straight to an angle within the first minute. Like, wrestling has never meant less on this show. It's kind of crazy how quickly that happens.
My thing is, like, as long as the line between pay-per-view and TV stays divine, in that, like, as long as on pay-per-view you're still getting quality matches, like, I'm okay with TV not being a match-forward presentation. Especially on an hour-long show. Like if you're doing a Dynamite, there's kind of a reason you need, like, some 15-minute bangers in there. You know what I mean? You're filling up time. But it's like, with an hour show, if, like the best you could ask for was, like, a 10-minute, like, good match, you know what I mean? So I'm okay with, like, a short 1 hour show not being, like, we gotta have, like, banger after banger after banger.
And, like, I have long lamented the death of TV wrestling. Like TV wrestling as like a philosophy. Like TV wrestling is different from pay-per-view wrestling. You wrestle faster. You're wrestling to like the idea of television, not the idea of like, because it's like the difference of attention span, I guess, right? Because if someone bought a pay-per-view, you know they're willing to be taken on that journey. They're sitting down to watch that match, as opposed to television where someone has a remote in their hand at all times and has no commitment to what they're watching. So like that's the philosophy. It has to be faster and attention grabbing.
Again, to give credit to ISIS.
Lots of credit to ISIS today.
Well, you gotta hand it to him. Like, historically, through ratings, where does the drop-off happen in a pro wrestling show? It's during the matches.
Yeah.
Matches don't retain viewership.
Except for AEW. AEW is the weird outlier there. Because...
Yeah.
Ultimately you train your audience, I guess, isn't it? If there's because like there has been 60-minute matches on AEW TV, and historically those 60-minute matches have gained audience because AEW has trained their audience to expect better wrestling from television, as opposed to like if you are watching Russo TV, you have trained your audience immediately to be like, wrestling doesn't matter, give me the angle, I'm waiting for the angle.
And I feel like though it's like it is an interesting gambit or interesting like thought process to be like, it was 2006 wrestling TV audiences ready for that?
Probably not.
It's like, and like, again, like, you know, train them. Maybe they would be. Maybe that'd be a thing that would help them stand out. But like, I don't know. I can understand the mindset of like, if you're looking at history at that point, to be like, the matches don't matter. We have to keep things happening. Boom, bam, boom, bam, boom.
Mm-hmm. And like that is the Vince Russo television philosophy, like for better or worse, which actually it was the problem with the 2014 stuff, because the 2014 stuff was boring. It's like it was Russo bad and Russo boring, as opposed to like these shows, you do not have time to get bored. It is fundamentally impossible. You are moving to a new thing every 90 seconds,
which again is like why I'm sort of excited for this era.
Vince Russo was, quote-unquote, in charge of the Bound for Glory pay-per-view behind the scenes. He frequently stepped out into the back of the arena during the pay-per-view to monitor crowd reactions and see the matches in person. Backstage observers say there was no doubt he was in charge at the pay-per-view. Dutch Mantel took a step back in his duties and let Russo handle a lot. He had an answer for everyone, says one wrestler. When he stepped out into the crowd to watch some of the event, he would provide updates on the score of the local baseball team, the Detroit Tigers, who were playing in the World Series game that night.
Okay.
Which, by the way, when TNA booked the venue for Bound for Glory, how pissed do you think that not only did the Detroit Tigers get to the World Series final, they were playing a home game that night head-to-head?
Yeah. But they still, like, you know, crowd looked good.
Yeah, they drew like 3,700-ish, which was close to sold out.
They were sure to be like, hey, look how we did, even against World Series Detroit Tigers.
Yeah, so they did pretty well in the end. Apparently there was a big uptick when Angle got signed, as you might expect.
Yeah, I mean, that was the saving grace for that building, I guess.